Everyone realizes that in crisis times, it's about the new reality. ESG is not just about green bonds, environmentally friendly financing. It's about a much broader range of things: poverty alleviation, social help, clean energy, affordable housing. It's actually much better balanced. A lot of the money that's out there on the sidelines is going to look to come in. Investors have the confidence. They are seeing the performance of their investments. We're going to see an acceleration globally. Clients all across the world are coming to us.
We need natural resources for our industrialized world. Everybody has a focus to become greener in their production. We are convinced that it's important to finance that to reduce the carbon footprint of our clients and finance those with high and increasing ESG standards. We discuss it with every client. We give them the time to transform and also clear directions. They understand the importance to turn from brown to green.
On behalf of the German Values Foundation, I would like to welcome you very warmly to our session on sustainable transformation. My name is Tobias Raffel. I'm the Foundation's Executive Director, and I will guide you through our day. We are here at the Four Winds Pavilion, which is a historic hydroelectric power plant. And for our topic, this is really the right place to be, and only a few meters away from the International Conference Center of COP26. Thank you very much to Deutsche Bank for providing us with this great space here, and also for live streaming the session. We have, I think, a very exciting agenda in front of us. In the first part, we will launch our study on the sustainable transformation of German companies. And after presenting the results, we will have a high-level CEO panel to discuss the results. And then in the second part, we will launch our new Sustainability Institute, FuturIST, once again followed by a CEO and initiator panel. Let's get started. From attitude to action, how German CEOs transform to sustainability is the title of our study, and it's also great teamwork. Thank you very much to the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research and to Bain Company for doing this study together. Together, we analyzed how German companies are transforming to greater sustainability. We interviewed the top management, we looked at secondary data, and we produced reports in German and in English that you can find on the websites for download. And a special, very special thanks goes to 20 CEOs that we were able to interview for this study, all the way from Daimler to Telekom to Deutsche Bank to RWE, Siemens, and many other companies. So a very broad spectrum. And thank you very much to you for participating in this study. We would like to present the results here, and I'm very happy to do this together with Johan Rockström and Walter Sinn. Johan Rockström is probably the best-known climate scientist globally. He developed the concept of planetary boundaries, and he leads the PIK. And then Walter Sinn, who is the managing director of Bain Company and also a member of the global board of directors of the company. Johan, I would like you to start with the presentation, and then we move.
Let me just put this study a bit in context. Germany is the fourth largest economy in the world. Not only that, it's a heavy export industrial country with a very significant dependence still on gas, coal. It's therefore a country that will be determinant whether the world has any chance of landing within the Paris range of 1.5 and well below 2, because when you look at the complex geopolitical setting in the world, we need to have countries like Germany, who are sitting really with a really significant challenge in terms of the phase-out, to show that this is not a sacrifice of solving an environmental problem. This is the pathway towards the next level of modernity, prosperity, equity, a solution for a transformation into a more attractive future. And if the fourth largest economy in the world, sitting with the challenges that Germany does, can succeed, then the world can succeed. And I think that is why this report is so significant in my mind, because the companies that have been participating here are very significant, large actors in the German business community. And I must admit that, we were expecting some positive results in terms of the new narrative of shifting the whole climate agenda from being a corporate social responsibility, a moral obligation only. But I was not expecting the unanimous and really strong results that we find in this report. Number one, the attitude towards sustainability has changed, and has changed just over the last few years, from being basically an environmental agenda, really important. I mean, really companies taking responsibility, now shifting towards being a CEO question, a chair of the boards, a strategic business strategy for competitiveness in the future. So that is really important, that company CEOs today want to be part of the solution, want to be part of the race to zero, and the sustainability fundamentally changes the business model. So that is a really important message coming out of this study. The second is that we have a number of quantitative measures that I think guides us also towards what happens over the next few years. Number one is that 90% of the CEOs believe that over the next 5 years, sustainability will be a more important driving force, even than digitalization. In fact, 50% are convinced that it's really significantly more important. So that just shows that we are in an exponential journey towards a tipping point, a positive tipping point in this sense. But 60%, and this is really important, conclude that today, on the short term, that there is a conflict between profitability and sustainability. So we have this strong strategic conviction that on the long term, this makes sense. It is the future for competitiveness. But on the short term, we have this hump that we have to cross, and that hump on the short term actually leads to some very difficult decisions. And well, many of you in this room are sitting in the midst of that challenge, which we in the scientific community conclude means that we need the private sector, the industry, together with policy, to act very much in tandem. And that 50% of the participating CEOs conclude that they are today driving this transition, not being driven by it. And that's quite interesting, because I think many of us have often thought that business leaders have been basically been forced forward to react on sustainability requirements from the NGO community, from policy, from science. But now we see a shift, with CEOs actually driving the transition and driving the landscape and the attitudes, how ESG is perceived. So that is also, we believe, a shift. Finally, companies also have put quantitative science-based targets at the forefront of the business culture and direction of travel. And interestingly, among the companies part in this study, on average, they put carbon neutrality targets to 2035, with a variation across the different sectors, of course, between telecom, banking, insurance, steel, chemistry, airlines, but on average, a net carbon neutrality point by 2035. That's 10 years earlier than Germany as a nation, 2045, and 5 years earlier than the European Union in terms of the largest economic region in the world. That's interesting to see that the frontier companies are now aligning in a much faster pathway towards carbon neutrality than, let's say, the world at large or the policy dialogues. So there's something happening here, and scientifically we see this to be not only promising, but we also think that this is the first step towards the next integrated systems understanding. That's why I put the planetary boundary graph here, because we have so much scientific evidence, as you know, that it won't be enough to just decarbonize our fossil fuel dependence to land safely within a 1.5 degrees Celsius future. We also need to come back on nitrogen, on phosphorus, keep the carbon sinks in nature intact, all the tree systems, all the soils, the whole food system transition. Otherwise, we will fail on Paris, and we will fail on Sustainable Development Goals as well. So I think we're seeing, leaders in business just taking the first step, actually, towards integrating a full, land, biodiversity, water, and carbon agenda within their business models. So it's, in truth, quite a significant finding, and also an exciting moment to move along this agenda. Back to you, Tobias.
Thanks a lot. My microphone works. Great. Sustainability is much more than just climate change. I mean, we're here at the COP26, so climate change is very much in the focus of attention. And when we interviewed the 20 CEOs and asked them for sustainability, they all came up with the topic of climate neutrality first. So this is pretty much, one of the interview partners called it a guiding star in the sustainability agendas of corporates these days. But there's more. Martin Brudermüller from BASF said sustainability has 3 legs, E, S, and G. And this is very much the case if we look at the sustainability agendas of large German corporates. They have, on average, 8 different sustainability goals that they've set themselves, all the way from reducing plastic, eliminating human rights violations in their value chains, to a higher female participation and diversity. So it's a broad picture that we have to see. And The SDGs, Johan just mentioned the SDGs, are on every corporate website. The sustainability agendas of large German companies are all connected to the SDGs. You see these colorful tiles a lot on the websites. And SDG number 8, 9, and 13 are the ones that are most referred to. The transformation to sustainability really is critical to success. This is what we learned from our interviews and the analysis. And this was not the case a few years back, where sustainability was a nice-to-have topic, whereas today it really is a must-have topic. And we came up with 4 different perspectives on this topic. And one is really to survive. This is what we heard from many interview partners, all the way from the banking sector to retail to real estate, for example. If we don't transform, we will lose our license to operate. So transformation to sustainability is fundamental, is key, is essential to survive. We have other perspectives like securing one's business and also empowering others. But many companies, and this is also what you already referred to, is have the ambition to lead, to be in the front, to come up with new solutions, sustainable solutions, and play an important part in this moving forward. Key stakeholders are drivers and roadblocks at the same time. And therefore, one of the key results is also stakeholder management has become very important. Take the customers, for example, the consumers. On the one hand side, they demand greener products. And on the other side, they are not ready or willing to pay more for sustainable products. Take investors, for example. On the one hand side, they ask for performance criteria of E, S, and G. But then they also look at the quarterly financial results. And this is often a conflict. Regulators, the states set a lot of incentives on the one hand side to push sustainability. And on the other side, we see a lot of red tape and regulation that is hindering transformation. So stakeholder management is obviously a key challenge in this process. One key focus at the moment is how can companies get their value chain sustainable? Because it is one thing to make your own operations climate neutral, Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. But the much bigger challenge in many cases is to have the entire value chain sustainable. And I remember a discussion with the head of the advisory board of Henkel, Simone Bagel-Tra. She said, we did our footprint analysis and we were really surprised. We saw that only 1% of our emissions are within our borders and our production sites. 99% are in the value chain and by the customers who use the products. So it's really looking at the value chains, and there are 3 different strategies that we saw how companies are actually trying to push sustainability in their value chains. One is to hold suppliers accountable and set criteria. You need to meet certain sustainability criteria in order to continue being our supplier. Otherwise, we will not list you anymore. Then, second strategy, jointly work on sustainable solutions. This is really the partnership approach where suppliers and companies come together and look for sustainable solutions and adjust products and processes together. And then the third strategy is to assist suppliers in their own transformation. And we heard of a lot of good new tools, a green digital twin, where you, for example, design a product and look at the carbon footprint of this product digitally without actually producing it. These kind of tools are then also put at the suppliers for them to be used. So this is really a helping approach to sustainability in the value chains. One key learning, I think, of our study is sustainability transformation is not a sprint. It is at least a marathon. And we came up, as you can see here, with 4 different transformation types of paths. One is the marathon. It is a long way to go, but it's relatively easy because you know it's 42 kilometers and you know you have to walk there or run. So the steps are clear. So this is the easiest one. It gets more complex when we look at the triathlon, which really is facing industries like automotive, engineering, banks, and insurances, where some of the key business models and products are being disrupted. It gets more complex, it gets more challenging. Another more challenging approach or path is the team marathon, and here companies are very dependent on other stakeholders, like the suppliers, for example, or dependent on regulation, on technology. So this is a path that companies cannot go on their own. They are very much dependent on others. And the most challenging transformation path is the team triathlon, where it's complex and dependent on others at the same time. And I think our analysis showed that many companies from the energy sector, from the chemicals, aviation, and steel are those that are really facing this very tricky and long transformation path. Last slide from my side. We talked to so many CEOs that all have different characters, and it was very interesting to see how they also as individuals approach this topic of sustainable transformation. So we looked at their attitudes, at their actions, and came up with 5 different CEO persona. So ideal types of CEOs. I would not put any of the ones that we talked to 100% in one group or on the other, but I think we can learn from this persona that there are different approaches. And this is the one on the left, the passionate believer. He or she is really passionate about the topic. He says, here I stand, I can do no other. And he or she does everything really to push sustainability within the own organization, but also beyond. We have type number 2, the optimistic opportunity seizer, who says, well, this is a great opportunity for me. I'll do everything for the benefit of my company. There are more pragmatic types. The pragmatic transformation manager is the one who says, well, in the past 10 years, I had to transform my company to become more digital. Now the challenge is to make my company more sustainable. It's a transformation challenge. So how do I organize this? Can you ask in a rather pragmatic way? And this is the type in the middle. And we have the more pessimistic types, the disengaged delegator and the pessimist obstructionist. I must say this last type we didn't find in our interviews. I hope they are not there in the business world so much anymore. But in the past, there might have been CEOs like this. But really, I think we saw most of them on the left-hand side of this passionate believer, optimistic opportunity taker. So, on to you for the recommendations. What is it that we can learn and recommend from this study?
Thank you, Tobias. Well, you heard about marathon and triathlon. And even a marathon is, as you know, not an easy thing. So you will not be surprised by hearing that all of our CEOs, including those here in the room, said that the sustainability transformation is one of the biggest management challenges we ever had. So how to manage it successfully? And here are, based on the interviews, based on best practices, our 10 recommendations. So the 10 steps to come from attitude to action. And let me do it in a punchy way, given time that we have. So first is a comprehensive diagnostic, which is always the basis, you will say. But here it is not an easy one. Right? Think about all the efforts needed for carbon footprint only. We know many companies still struggling, particularly when it gets to scope 3. And let's not forget that this diagnostic should go beyond climate. So it's the full ESG suite that you need to look at. And we should also add, looking at the own company is the first step. But what are best practices? So look at competition. And when it is about disruptive technologies, hydrogen as an example, you need to do more than little steps. It's really understanding the future trends. Second, building on that, it's defining the ambition and targets. Look, 90% of our CEOs have said our strategy and business model is touched. And many have said fundamentally. So what are now the ambitions? And I would just to point on 2 watch-outs in that context. The first one being stay focused. If you have those 17 SDG buckets, you cannot, play on everyone, and you cannot win in everyone. So what are the truly important ones? Second watch-out, make it very concrete. Ambitious targets are nice, but they need to be measurable. Third, and that's one of the most important ones, bring together strategy and sustainability. I know still many situations where sustainability is discussed as an appendix or afterthought, and I don't think it's right. We need to bring it together. This is one portfolio perspective, including sustainability. It is one planning process. We need to bring it down to resource allocation and investments on an integrated basis. And most importantly, then play in the offense. The leading players also in our study are not, about fulfilling regulatory requirements or just doing their duty. They're about tackling, the full potential, the all value creation potential embedded in sustainability. Top line, cost, funding. Number 4 is sketching the entire transformation path. Only 7%, and that's annoying, of sustainability initiatives globally, a global Bain study, are considered to be successful. More than 50% are real failures. It is not surprising because we're talking about long time horizons, big investments, uncertainty, and particularly we're talking about behavioral changes. So need to apply all the golden recipes and toolkits from fundamental transformations. Roadmap needs to be there, milestones, responsibilities, but also the soft side. So it's a true change management effort we are talking. And building on that, point number 5, you need to have the governance right. The CEO needs to lead it from the top. I'm more than persuaded that at least he needs to co-lead it, he or she. So that's definitely number 1. And then building on that, we see different examples of sustainability organizations. It's always about a balance between a center and specific roles, like a chief sustainability officer, and the business. And I fundamentally believe sustainability needs to be part of the business. Business needs to own it. That means that we also need to talk about the right KPIs and right incentives, at least for top management. 6th, gather the right talent and skills. Well, you will say that's clear. I can tell you a lot of organizations completely underestimate the gaps here and completely underestimate the education and qualification needs going along with that, plus recruiting for specific expertise, fresh perspectives, a bit like we have seen for digital. The good thing is you can count on the young generation, passionate, even enthusiastic, but also to put it the other way around. No company will, win the war for talents these days without a clear sustainability strategy and purpose. 7th, build useful partnerships. Sustainability doesn't stop at the boundaries of the own organization. That holds true for carbon transition, but in general. So playing on partnerships, ecosystems is the name of the game. To add expertise, to add on the service offering, but also to link companies with NGOs. We've seen a lot of them during the study, including interesting examples like BASF and RWE going for the attack on offshore wind farms. Eighth is the communication part. Communication is key to all stakeholders, employees, investors, customers. And you need a story. Of course you need a story. But it should not stop at a fluffy, a headline or buzzword type of description of what you want to do, but it needs to get very concrete. Measures, measurable, and you need to be credible also on the path of delivering. That's, I think, the name of the game these days. Last not least, 9th and 10th. We talked about the personal example of the CEOs, leading from the front, leading from the top and from the front and setting the tone. That's a must. But I combine here with the 10th point. It will all be about changing culture, behaviors, coming to a culture in companies that really embrace sustainability. And here we are. So we bring it down to the organization with multipliers, with sponsorship spine, with engagement. We've seen interesting programs like at Henkel or at Deutsche Telekom during this study. And I can tell you, as in all transformation programs, it's this hourglass effect. So you need to crack the middle management. It's at this point, where ambition meets or meets not reality. So those are the 10, let me call it recommendations. And let me end high by bringing them on a more maybe conceptual or emotional level. We clearly think, and it's also based on the interviews, that sustainability will need a combination of footprint, handprint, and hardprint. Footprint meaning, all the negative impacts that one normally discusses on environment and society. So reduce, tackle that. That's the base. But even more, and that's something we should talk about, it's the handprint. So the positive impact on environment and society. A lot of stories we could tell, we could talk about, narratives that are important for the third element here, the hardprint. So winning the hearts of people will be decisive in companies, in society, and it's about the combination of footprint, handprint, hardprint. That's the essence of recommendation from the study, and I should say the way that German CEOs have embarked for the journey is very encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Johan. Now that we learned about the main result of the study, we want to discuss them. We want to ask ourselves what can we learn from the study, what insights might we get also here for the COP26 discussions and negotiations. And I'm very happy to discuss that in a very distinguished panel. And I ask on stage Christian Sewing from Deutsche Bank, CEO, Klaus Rosenfeld, CEO Schaeffler, and Astrid Teckentrup, CEO DACH, Procter & Gamble. Great that you are here. Oh. We're all on stage, even though COVID tells us to be 1 meter apart from each other. So great to have you all here. My first question goes to the 3 CEOs. Maybe Astrid, you can go first, and then Klaus, and then Christian. Where are your companies at the moment on this transformation path to sustainability? And maybe also, are you satisfied with the progress that you've made so far?
I think it's an interesting point in time. We're here at the COP26, and I think we're all aware it's an important moment in time to make decisions and look at plans and see whether they are sufficient for the future or not. When we look at the plans that we have as a company, we have just recently declared a goal to get to net zero by 2040 for Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 as defined in SBTI. So that's what we have declared, which means that we're now officially part of the race to zero and are on this path until 2040. The question is, how do we get there? Because you talked about action, that's what we need, right? How do we get there? And I think what's interesting is when we look at P&G as a global company, Germany plays an important role in this. Germany plays an important role because we know that the work that we need to do is one that will flourish and develop very well in the German ecosystem. This is why we have put a product supply innovation center for the globe into Frankfurt to make sure that a team in Frankfurt can actually influence 200 sites that we have across the world by developing modular and scalable solutions that will make production and logistics emission-free. Interestingly, that's not enough. And let me describe that as well, because when we talk about Scope 3, for us, as you described in your introduction, this is an important part of the emissions that we're talking. The in-use phase, the consumer in-use phase is very important. We're talking to 5 billion consumers around the world every year. That's how many consumers actually have our products in hand and use them. I think it's our responsibility to go beyond what we can do in our own operations and actually look at how can we provide products that reduce the emission footprint in use, and then as a marketing company look at the question of how can we make sure that we take consumers along that journey, that we actually change their habits to come to something where to come to a situation where good products with a low environmental footprint are actually used the way they are supposed to be used.
Great, thanks a lot. Klaus?
Well, I try to use an analogy from this study. And I would say a supplier like ours, our company is in any case in the triathlons category, maybe even the team triathlon category. And we announced our targets last week, 2040 climate neutral. What is for a supplier with our scope and our products ambitious? So compared to a triathlon, I would say we have trained for some years. We know where the complexity is. We know where we're good, where we're not so good. And the race has just started. So we are in the water at the moment, but we have not even seen the end of the swimming. And we know that the tough part is the end of the race. But we are definitely committed to the 2040 goal. And it's important that, the whole team reaches the finishing line. So that's where we are.
Great. Christian, triathlon, marathon, where are you now?
Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate you to the study because it's not easy to kind of summarize such a big topic in such a comprehensive way. And I really hope that a lot of people make use of it because there are so many good recommendations, observations, and so congratulations to that. Look, for a bank, it's a little bit easier. If you think about your own operations, we have been kind of climate and carbon neutral since 2012. But for us, the question is far more, how can we help the economy to transform into a green economy? And in this regard, we really put sustainability to the heart of our strategy 2.5 years ago when we had the big transformation of Deutsche Bank. And we had on the one hand all these KPIs in order to show to the investors how we can become a sustainable, profitable bank. But I always said we need to support that with qualitative goals. And qualitative goals was client-centric, technology, leadership, but sustainability. Because we could see simply by the demand of our clients, starting from the wealth management clients, by the way, not from the corporate side, starting from the wealth management clients, that they look for a different type of asset for investing money. And therefore, I think we started rather opportunistic, to be honest, then supported it with a pretty big goal, 200 billion of financing and investments to be achieved by the end of 2025. And did this, what Walter was just saying, have a central organization, yes, under a CEO leadership, but then also kind of orchestrated in the businesses. And we went on a path where I would say in 30 years of being with Deutsche Bank, I've hardly seen such an engagement across the group. And therefore, we were now able actually to do two things. A, to prepone the targets to 2023, because we believe banks should be part of the solution also when it comes to transforming the economy. We need to be there with our financing. And secondly, there is no individual client meeting anymore, be it on the corporate side or private side, where sustainability is not a topic. And therefore, I think finally we are back there where we want to be, that clients are, or that banks are actually asked for their advice, for their expertise. Last but not least, there's one thing which I think is a little bit missing in the study. If you don't do it, I mean, you said it with get the right talent. I think if you are not having a sustainable strategy or sustainability strategy, you are running out of people in totality. The attrition is high. You won't get young talents anymore. It's not only getting the right talent for that specific topic, but in almost each and every interview we have, the question from the person who we would like to hire on sustainability in our strategy is one of the top three.
Which would actually lead us to the second part of our session today already, because with the new FuturIST Institute, we want to train the next generation in sustainable transformation. But we come to this a little bit later. Thanks for that. There's a lot going on in your companies. You set the goals 2040 this year, last week even, this year also. There's a lot changing here. Walter, what is your assessment? Was 2021 a turning point in the corporate discussion and action as far as sustainable transformation is concerned? You know many of the CEOs personally, also internationally. If you compare that, was it a turning point, 2021?
Well, first to state the very obvious, sustainability has really landed on top of the agenda. I mean, we pointed on it in several aspects of the study, and that was clear in all interviews that we've done here. And by the way, also in work we do beyond the study. Was the year a turning point? I would probably say rather an acceleration point of a journey that had already started. Particularly, I would say an acceleration regarding all around climate and carbon footprint, given also what happened on the regulatory side and the target side. So there's clearly an acceleration, very much so. To your question on how does that compare to global? I would say in principle we see the same dynamic globally for companies, a lot of engagement, maybe a bit less. But if you take the three legs that you mentioned earlier on, so the E, the S, the G, I would say G is everywhere. E is something Europe has a lot focused on and is focusing these days. The S is something we see very much with US companies. So tackling the issue of social inequality is a big point there, and rightly so.
Okay, ESG. Let's look at the E once again. Johan, you are an expert for the E, for many other things as well, but climate change, you presented this one result of the study, which is that the 20 companies that we looked at aim for climate neutrality in 14 years from now, 2035, which we all found surprising, no? But looking from a scientific and an international perspective, would you say this is good? And would you say it's good enough?
Yeah, well, it's definitely good. Good enough is a question, of course, because what we also found in the study, not surprisingly, is that the definition of carbon neutrality varies, and this is something that we need to, resolve very fast to make clear that carbon neutrality to really land safely at 1.5 requires from all companies, all nations, to decarbonize from fossil fuel dependence, number one, and follow what we call the carbon law, cut emissions by half every decade to have a net zero point by 2050, and that net zero point in line with the SBTi new standards, should be done as much as possible as what is defined as like for like, meaning that if you still have, a certain residual of fossil fuel-based emissions, that those should be, if necessary, offset through investments in taking out carbon from the same kind of sources, like investing in renewable energy, if you still have some fossil fuel emissions. This idea that you can have carbon neutrality by continuing emitting coal-based or oil or gas-based emissions by planting trees is simply scientifically not correct. It's a too big risk of losing that carbon sink, because you can lose it through droughts and fires, and it's green carbon that is not comparable with black carbon. So there's a little hitch there that one has to be very honest about, and recognize this triathlon analogy that, you were pointing out, Klaus, that you've been training a lot, and well, I've been doing a few triathlons, and everyone who's been doing a triathlon knows that the first leg of swimming is the toughest one, and that's why they put the swimming first, actually. But in Sweden the water is cold, I can assure you. So the point being that it's important to get the measuring schemes, the monitoring right from the very beginning, that we are very transparent and measure the right things, because the first leg will determine the journey, the entire journey. And I think that's one of the recommendations from science, to really be very clear on the monitoring schemes. And I in a way, congratulate all of you of kind of taking that goal so firmly, but also then to take on the methodologies of following it in quantitative sense.
Great. Let's take a CEO perspective once again and look at the stakeholders. We learned that stakeholders can be drivers and roadblocks at the same time. And I would like to start asking you, Astrid, about your customers. 5 billion globally every year. What about the customers? Are they helping or hindering transformation? What would you say?
We have, looking at our business, two types of customers. We have A, retail customers, and B, consumers. When we talk about retail customers, the key challenge for us is a little more tangible and maybe in our own hands, because what we need to do is we need to innovate the supply chain. We need to find new ways to make the supply chain or reduce emissions in the supply chain. We can do this together, and we're working with companies that we can actually talk to. When we talk about consumers, this is more challenging. It is more challenging because we need to develop product solutions which cater to the everyday needs of consumers and have an irresistible product benefit. And at the same time, without consumers thinking too much about it, actually deliver the sustainability. That's what we're trying to do. Deliver irresistible products in a sustainable way. Mm-hmm. That's the combination. And that is a combination probably of good R&D work on the one hand that delivers these product solutions that can be irresistible and that bake in the sustainability part, and great marketing that then actually makes them so attractive that consumers actually want to take the journey or want to move along on the journey.
Okay. So far, consumers. Let's look at investors. Christian, you know the financial markets very well. You are yourself a big investor. What do you think? Are the capital markets, are investors more the drivers of sustainable transformation or roadblocks?
Well, I'm still thinking about the 5 billion clients. I'm just thinking about Deutsche Bank and 5 billion clients if we would have that. So now I understand why you asked Astrid for the client side and me on the investor side. So, that's quite impressive. Look, I think definitely a supporter. There is no roadblock. I would say it's just the other way around. If you don't have a clear sustainability target, and I cannot tell you the exact date, but if as a corporate, as a financial institution, as somebody who at least is listed in the capital markets over the medium term, over the next 3 or 4 years, if you don't have an acceptable sustainability rating, you will have a real issue. And therefore, I'm always saying the sustainability rating of a corporate, which is attached to the capital markets, is as important as a credit rating. and that will accelerate, that will gather speed. So from a debt side as well as from an equity point of view, I think sustainability is key. You need to show to your investors where you stand. But the investors are also rational, and this is exactly what we need to now get through in the public, with the society, with the governments, with the regulators. This is not black or white. We need a transformation time. You cannot expect, like Klaus was just saying, he has a clear path for 2040. We have discussed in this dialogue with Schaeffler that very much in detail. We learned from that, and we need to also accept that transformation path. Because if you don't do this, if you expect kind of a full transformation within 12 to 24 months, you may succeed on the E side. You completely lose out on the S side. Mm-hmm. And that is a problem in particular for a country like Germany, but also a lot of other industrial companies. But in short, clear supporter, you need to have a clear sustainability part in order to get refinancing over time. But for that, we need a transformation time.
Okay. What about suppliers? Klaus, you have, I think, 75 factories around the world, probably tens of thousands of suppliers. You are a supplier yourself. What about suppliers? What is your perspective on that?
Asking what the stakeholders. Let's start with the customers and look at them. You know, we are in a different business than banks and also like Procter & Gamble. We have large automotive customers, and our large automotive customers are truly large. They have impact, yeah? And they are definitely demanding in this area. Mm-hmm. And our irresistible answer to this demand is technology. Yeah? We believe that the only way we can really contribute here to make our customers more sustainable and more successful is through an intelligent use of our know-how, of our experience, and to produce technology and innovation that helps them, the customer itself, to achieve their goals. If a VW wants to produce cars that are green cars, then that requires lots of efforts to get there. This is real. This is not just sort of talking something abstract, but produce a bearing that is predominantly made out of steel in a way that is carbon neutral is something that has not been done before. And we need lots of green steel. We need materials that have not been, used so far. That is our challenge. And this is also why our targets are more long dated. But it's good to have this demanding dialogue, because at the end of the day, customers and also suppliers, we share the same goal. And that's also what the study clearly says. And that's where we want to contribute. But it is very much about innovation, about technology, best use of know-how and experience. And that's also what makes this so exciting. And that's where the opportunity for us as well to rethink certain things. And here, a company like Schaeffler that is many different things at the same time, in an automotive supplier, an industrial supplier, a family-owned company, Mr. Schaeffler is here, a listed company, has great sort of, on the one hand, challenges, but on the other hand, also a super position to be part of this. So I think the stakeholders are here and there painful, but that's what it is. Internally and externally, muscles don't grow if you don't challenge them. So we are in a hard sort of position, sometimes between a rock and a hard place, because our customers want everything in green, but at the same price. And that, unfortunately, is not possible. But we'll have a chance to play a role here. And I can tell you, there's no green future without bearings.
Great. Johan presented one result of the study, which we found quite interesting, about the trade-off between sustainability and profitability. And you said that 60% of the CEOs we interviewed see a fundamental trade-off between the two. Many and others would disagree. We thought in preparation for this panel, let's ask some more CEOs about this. And we got some video statements, which we will show now, because we asked this very fundamental question. How do you look at this? And it makes a big difference, no? If you think that the two go hand in hand, profitability and sustainability, you look at the transformation in a completely different way than if you think they are opposites. So let's have a look at what 5 other CEOs are saying. They couldn't be here today, but we got their video statements. So please put them on the screen. Thanks.
I believe that sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand. But sustainability characteristics also have a price tag. If customers are willing to pay more for more sustainable products, then this will be sharing the burden of extra costs and investments into new and sustainable production processes and can make it a two-way street, profitable and sustainable at the same time.
Profitability and sustainability are two sides of the same coin, I deeply believe. If you move on fast on sustainability, it can give you a competitive advantage. And of course, that will drive your profitability. So we are deeply convinced that you have to do both, and you can do both at the same time.
Our goal is to become sustainable in two ways. On the one hand, greener, but on the other hand, also sustainable in terms of financial performance. We chose this path because we are absolutely convinced that both goals can be combined. By the way, this is also the reason why I studied engineering. I strongly believe that innovation and technology can bring life and environment into harmony.
I'm obviously part of the minority here because I'm absolutely convinced profitable business will be sustainable business in the future. That's why we are working on CO2 neutral technologies, sustainable supply chains, and resource conservation. Yes, this will cost a lot of money at first, but it is an investment that will pay off in the long term.
You can no longer define profitability just in financial terms. Profitability needs to be an all-encompassing approach towards sustainability that looks at financial profit at the same time as creating win-wins for people and planet at the same time. And if you manage that holistically, then that's when you're creating true profit that is sustainable.
Johan Seitz from Kenya, he sent it to us only yesterday, so it's great to have these statements. Walter, I would like to ask you about sustainability and profitability. When CEOs approach you for advice and seek advice, what do you recommend them? How can you reconcile the two? How can you manage the two? Is there also a good governance to reconcile sustainability and profitability?
Well, look, it's a challenge, and by the way, a double challenge now for me, because earlier on, in a way, I tried to summarize already, in 10 key statements what should be the name of the game. But let me try to bring it down to maybe 2-3 points that are really decisive in that context. The first one is, and I strongly believe that we need to have integrated strategy discussions. It cannot be that there is a strategy here and that some sustainability targets there are just set. And we heard all the 3 CEOs here, Astrid, Klaus, Christian, giving very strong examples on how they manage, their strategy for the future oriented to sustainability. That's, for me, clear number one, making that happen. The second one takes up the point of only what gets measured gets done. So you need, obviously, embedding sustainability-oriented KPIs into the organizational steering. That's a must. And the third one is, it's a journey. So while there might be on a short-term basis, investment needs, and you don't see the fruits of those investments, they will come over time. And that brings me back to, this is about managing a transformation. Okay. And for the governance aspect, look, we've jointly discussed along those studies, and we see a lot globally happening. But the fact that the CEOs need to take a central role, I think, came across. The fact that there is no silver bullet solution for governance, I think, is also clear. And we've seen a lot, happening. Chief sustainability officers, committees, advisory boards, specific functions, specific roles. But ultimately, let me get back to a statement that I made earlier on. I think business needs to own sustainability. That is crystal clear for me, and has the implication that we are not talking about something on the side again. And let me, by the way, in that context, maybe use the analogy of digital. We have seen that speedboats, that can have an effect, can help, maybe at the beginning. But if you want to change the core of your business, you need to bring it into the core.
Johan, we are here at the COP26. It's only day number 3 of the international conference. We have 10 more days to go. You are an expert in many of the discussions, in the negotiations. I know that you've been quite heavily involved in preparing this conference also. What are your thoughts and insights from our discussion so far and from the study that you can really use in the negotiations? Are there any learnings that you can take for yourself?
Oh yes, I think there's one really central point coming out of just this final round, which I can always feel hungry to run across into the blue zone immediately with, because Martin Brudermüller is absolutely right when he admittedly says that, look, he's fully on board on the sustainability transformation, but at this point it is more costly. And the question is, from his perspective, that we have to be prepared to pay slightly more for the sustainable products. And in his BSAF, let's say business horizon, that's a correct conclusion. But when you back up one step and think of why is this the case? How can it be that the sustainable products have this higher necessity of a willingness to pay? Well, it's a massive market failure. It's a massive market failure. It is a proof that the difference between the sustainable products and the conventional products is that the planet is subsidizing. The climate is subsidizing. We're allowing ourselves to damage the climate system, the water systems, the biodiversity at the expense of low prices. So it's quite fantastic, isn't it, that so much of innovation is already competitive, even without subsidies, that Deutsche Bank sees already that it's worth investing along sustainable pathways, despite the fact that we have not corrected the price. So what the Blue Zone needs to hear is that Article 6 in this agreement has to be locked this week, and it has to provide the ways of trading schemes to put a price on carbon that levels out so that Martin can compete on the sustainable options already today, that it should be cost parity. And we know that the European Union is on the way in that direction, thanks to the corrections of the ETS. So now the emission trading scheme with a 60 euros per ton of carbon dioxide is starting to bite. I mean, in Germany, it is already having major impacts. It's, you may know, the Coal Commission in Germany said 2038 is a phase-out date on coal. Now that's backtracking very rapidly, thanks to the price on carbon. It's working. So, that's what I think we need to see. And, we haven't even started to talk about the price on soil carbon, on biodiversity-based carbon, on all the other price tags that would help this transition. If we're talking about triathlons, if you want to be really good at that first swimming part, you want to have a good wetsuit. And I think the carbon pricing is really the neoprene top tech super swimming suit that would make us race much faster.
Great. I like this analogy with triathlon and marathon. It really works well, I think. Christian and Klaus, you are here at COP26 launching events. I think in the afternoon you have a joint event. Christian, you with Deutsche Bank are hosting events today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Why are you here personally? What can companies, what can Schaeffler and Deutsche Bank contribute?
Well, we are not here for fun. We are here because we deeply believe from a Deutsche Bank point of view that we are central to the transformation. And for 2 reasons. Number one, I said when I started as CEO of Deutsche Bank, we need to be back in the middle of the society. Climate change is the biggest problem and the biggest kind of challenge we have in our society. And if I want to position Deutsche Bank in the middle of the society, we need to offer solutions. I can only offer solutions if I understand the problem, if I have the possibility to talk to people like Johan. But on the other hand, if we also show as Deutsche Bank that we want to go a step ahead. And therefore, yes, we decided to have the 200 billion target, and I'm confident that we reach it until 2023. It really looks very promising. But we said something else. We also said by 2030, we will make sure that our credit portfolio of 456 billion euros is carbon neutral. That means we are actively working with our clients on how do we transform that, how can we manage that. And that means we need to have discussions. And that also means that people like Klaus and myself must also inspire others and show we are here to change. And I'm not saying we are perfect, but we are here with the clear emotion and with the clear conviction to change and to help. Because that is for me clear. We are the last manager generation which can initiate that. Otherwise, it's too late.
Well, Christian said it all. I mean, we are here, and we're here with great interest, because I think this whole sustainability issue is only solvable with the business, with the global businesses, whether you are a supplier or a bank or a Procter or Gamble, whoever. And that's why we decided to participate and not just listen from somewhere else, but show a face and be part of the discussion, learn as much as we can, see what others are doing. And I can only echo what Christian said. This is not about one single sector or one single company trying to solve the problem, but it's clearly something where we need to cooperate. Yeah. And we strongly believe in this exchange. Deutsche Bank is our house bank, the bank that we constantly talk about certain things, not only just business, but also bigger trends. And that is very fruitful and very encouraging. And from my point of view, the only way to get there in good cooperation, to understand and also show that we as business leaders take this really serious and not just lip service or just for our own strategies, but an obligation that is a generational challenge for all of us, where we need to play an important role.
Yeah. So there's a lot you can contribute. It's necessary for you to be here personally and have the interaction. But what about your wishes for COP26 outcomes? This is what we asked the 5 CEOs once again. We asked them, what are your wishes? What do you hope for as results of the COP26 conference? From your industry, from your business, what are your wishes? And let's listen to the video statements once again.
I have 2 expectations. The first is we get a clear regulatory framework how we price carbon, which is incentivizing the movers and the fast movers and is penalizing those who are not moving on. The second is that we help the developing countries to get on the journey as well, and I think that's the demand I have for the rich countries.
Setting climate targets is one thing. Coming up with concrete actions and putting in place framework conditions that help to actually achieve the climate target is another. We need technological openness and room for innovations instead of more and more regulation. Therefore, I hope that COP26 will help to pave the way for concrete actions.
In order to achieve our climate protection goals worldwide, we must quickly establish a worldwide hydrogen production on an industrial scale and provide for the infrastructure. One thing is very obvious. The required quantities cannot be produced by one country alone. It is crucial to think hydrogen as a commodity on a worldwide market. What we therefore need are multinational approaches. These are key in accelerating the green transformation.
The pandemic showed what the world can achieve when we really pull together. This is the only way we can win the fight against climate change. So what I hope from the conference outcome is real, tangible action to increase and deepen global alliances to reach net zero by the middle of this century, to define clear measures to speed up this transformation as we do with our electric-only strategy at Mercedes-Benz, and to agree on holistic approaches that really connect the dots, from carbon-neutral cars to comprehensive infrastructure to smart grids.
We need governments to provide a clear framework and an action plan that allows us to stay within 1.5 degrees.
Very brief. Clear framework, action plan. I think we are running out a little bit of time, so I would like to jump to the last part of our discussion. Walter, you mentioned the framework footprint, handprint, hardprint. There's a lot we need to do to reduce our negative footprint. There's a lot we can do to increase our positive handprint, and we need to win the hearts of people, hardprint. Maybe one last round of how do you, and I start with you, Astrid, how do you make sure that you move along this path in the next years? Reducing footprint, increasing handprint, creating hardprint.
I talked a lot about consumers. I'd like to start with employees now. And for us, employees are the first proof point to actually see whether we're making progress in the right direction, because they are closest to the progress that we make. They hold us accountable, they hold us honest to what we say. And this is why we've said, on top of the goals that I've talked about already, by 2025, we want to make sure that all our packaging, 95% of our packaging is recyclable and reusable. Very close, so not too far in the future, and something that employees will be able to actually hold us accountable to. Very important for us to make sure, as we're continuing on this journey, to take employees along. The second part is, how can we win with consumers, not only by providing information and facts, but also reaching their heart. And what we're trying to do is we're trying, on top of facts and information, to actually use VIP activists as well. Ariel is one of the brands where we have a big consumer footprint, and this is why we're now working together with Felix Neureuter, who's actually become an activist in this space, and who's helping us to convince consumers to actually turn down their machine and not use water like they used to at 40 degrees, but wash at 30 degrees or even lower.
Klaus, what about you? Footprint, handprint, hardprint?
Well, I think the combination is good. And a certain pragmatism is good. But it also has a charming communication thing, to put it this way. And I think we should, with all these communications around us, still stay very realistic. This is a long-term challenge, and it needs a lot of endurance. We're not through with everyone now gets excited about footprint, hardprint, and handprint. We need to be realists and also don't pretend anything. This is a 20-year, task that needs to be done properly.
Christian?
Well, not a lot to add. I mean, I think the balance is important. I also do think that kind of interim success is important for a company. I mean, again, for Deutsche Bank, we had some more difficult years in the past. Now, with the transformation going into the right direction, being the number 3 global issuer of green bonds, you cannot even believe how much pride is coming back to the company, that we are, for instance, in that area, one of the leading institutions globally. And that pride you need to use in order to take the next step. And that is, for instance, the 2030 goal on our overall credit portfolio. So in this regard, I do think it is important that you take your people with you, like Astrid was just saying it, but always with a kind of a conservative planning. Because just saying and outlining targets is easy. Making sure that they are achieved also internally, what kind of communication you have to do then if you don't achieve it is another one. Therefore, I think the CEO absolutely needs to be ambitious, but at the same time balanced.
Let's look at the video statements one more time. We asked the 5 CEOs about the hardprint in particular. We asked them, how do you win hearts? How do you convince others to become drivers in the transformation? Let's look at the video statements one more time.
From my point of view, it is more than important that we are credible with regard to our sustainability activities. This includes a clear communication of our green transformation path and backing it up with concrete actions. The more specific we are regarding our actions, the more trust we will gain. And trust is the central prerequisite for taking the people along our journey.
I think two elements are quite important. Transparency about your intent, and then a clear commitment that you will execute that. I think that has helped us ourselves to engage our colleagues around the world. That shows a clear path for our customers and gives certainties for our shareholders.
Sustainability is just a word. We need to translate it for our employees to understand what it means for the company you're working for. What is our goal? What is our ambition as a company? Make it relevant for them. Because only when we make sure that all our stakeholders are part of an inclusive stakeholder management will we achieve a positive outcome.
At BASF, our mission since many years is we create chemistry for a sustainable future. Sustainability could not be more in the center. That makes it authentic and also motivates our team. Together we are creating chemistry for a sustainable future. We are offering transparency for all of our 45,000 sales products, a transparency highly valued by our customers to support them in their sustainability transformation.
Change is always connected to some level of insecurity, of course. It is our task to point out that this transformation is not only ecologically reasonable, but also economically and socially necessary. And that's what we do. However, I also see a large and growing number of people who are passionate about this change. An important driver for many of our stakeholders is the incredible motivation that comes with the opportunity to change the world for the better. I'm also sensing this spirit at ESMT and the new FuturIST Institute. And that's important because winning the next generation of leaders for this transformation is the most promising way to make it happen.
So Ola Källenius is mentioning the FuturIST Institute already, and I think we have to conclude our discussion here, which is an excellent discussion. I could go on for much longer. Maybe, Walter, you can help me summarizing and concluding the session. What is your most important takeaway from what we have discussed? And is that something that helps us to move from attitude to action? Because this is the topic. This is what we want to achieve.
Yes, I think there are, many insights, right? For sure, and a very interesting discussion. But if there's one takeaway for me, I would shoot for the triathlon as picture. We came across several times, and I think it's a good analogy. It represents the challenge. It's a multi-year challenge, obviously, maybe the biggest one ever, but certainly one of the biggest ones. It will demand, and that's why I think this picture is very good. It demands training, discipline, also in execution. Johan pointed on the very important first step, so the swimming part. Christian said earlier on, we need successes also in that piece. Klaus said we need persistence. It's not like, you do it just like that. Astrid was pointing on, we need to take the team with us. And that's why also I would summarize this triathlon example with the notion of team triathlon. Remember, that was and team triathlon for me would mean engaging the internal team, winning the hearts, but also things that we have heard today about this is not a single company that can solve the world here. We need, corporations, teaming, by the way, also with politicians. Great discussion, and the team triathlon sticks most to me.
Thanks so much for that. Thanks to all of you for this excellent discussion. I hope you can all stay with us because we will move on directly to the second part of this session, which is the launch of the FuturIST Institute. And we prepared a little video, which we will show now to introduce the Institute, and then we will have a discussion and a presentation about what this is all about. So let's please look at the video. Thank you very much again.
The time for change is now. You hear the voices on the streets. You see the change in politics. You understand the need for action. But how can you make an impact? How can you transform your company? And where is the best place to start your sustainable transformation? We are here to support you. We help you move from attitude to action to impact. FuturIST is an action-oriented institute for sustainable transformation. We help to connect and build bridges across industries and value chains. FuturIST creates knowledge and new perspectives. FuturIST provides cutting-edge education. FuturIST supports you hands-on. Benefit from our know-how, our network, and strong partners. We help you with orientation and goal setting. Enable you and your team. And together with you, we create individual tools to scale your impact. For a more sustainable future, let's reduce our footprint, increase our handprint, and create a heartprint. FuturIST, Institute for Sustainable Transformation.
We couldn't think of a better context for the launch of FuturIST here at COP26 in the context of this very distinguished and highly insightful panel, a panel that showed the necessity but also the steps that are currently being taken, and in light of a study that also shows the strong insights by CEOs, by distinguished leaders of the business world to take the next step. We thus came together with partners to launch the Institute and to bring together the need for action that comes out of insights. We would like to provide you with a broad overview of the institutes, of the context of the Institute before going into the discussion and to discussing what exactly the Institute can do, how it can contribute. It's very obvious from the discussion, but also the study beforehand, also the discussion obviously in the context of COP26, that there are all stakeholders requiring a massive change. Stakeholders in light of capital markets, of customers, of employees, but the broader society obviously as well. So this means regulators and others. At the same time, we also observe that there are strong prerequisites for this change to be happening. To look at specifically the change that we see in many parts of society, but also seeing the change in many parts of the business world that allow exactly this moment of time to be the one at which this change can take place. So we brought together a number of founding partners, a number of initiators who are supporting us in this effort to make the FuturIST work. In particular, we are very thankful for the founding partners, Werte-Stiftung and Futury, who along with ESMT actually made this first wish a reality. And we are in particular thankful to those companies that actually strongly believe in providing an academic context to exactly this institute. And here, as we've seen already in the preceding discussion, we are very thankful for Deutsche Bank. We are very thankful to Deutsche Post DHL. We are very thankful to the Schwarz Group, and in particular very thankful to Procter & Gamble. Along with other institutions, we've seen Johan Rockström from the Potsdam Institute and others who bring exactly this together, that we have academia, the business world, and think tanks, research that brings this question to the forefront of our discussion, but then also about it, how to be implemented. We've seen before that the question of sustainable transformation is one of probably the most important challenge that businesses around the world face. And we would like to exactly contribute to solving this question in the way we can, by providing new insights and providing insights that can also be transmitted, that can also be used in education to those who would like to learn about how to make it work, and in particular
to inspire those who would like to make it work by providing them with the insights and the tools, the framework in which this can be done, with the ultimate goal to gain scale, to really broaden the impact and to reach as many people, as many organizations, as many individuals as possible. So when we think of what we have in mind here, it's very clear that what we've heard before, that this sequence of attitude, action, impact needs to be achieved in a way that it reaches those who have the final say, who have the final decisions about rendering the society to make it more sustainable. And we, in particular, and we will hear more about this, focus on three parts: inspiration, education, activation, all being governed, all being in line with what an academic institution in cooperation with corporate partners can achieve and should achieve. In particular, when you think of, and this is a question obviously asking ESMT throughout the time, what actually does it entail to create an institute? Then what we certainly have in mind is there needs to be research. There needs to be new evidence on how what we can learn, what we know about the sustainable transformation, what really makes a difference, or what is maybe just pure marketing, or as it has been criticized, pure greenwashing. Second, the question is, once we know, once we have the evidence, what does it entail for the education? So what can we actually bring across to our students, to our executives, to the broader community? And finally, how can this be applied? So how can what actually has been learned, how can it be applied to general action? And this is, I think, a very nice translation into the three parts that I mentioned before: inspiration, education, activation. And thus I would leave it to our partners to now go into more deep dive into what each of these three elements means, how it actually goes from a more abstract, rather general statement into a very concrete one. Hand over to Tobias.
Thank you, Jörg. And it's a great cooperation, and I'm really happy to launch this institute here together with our partners. And let me explain a little bit about the inspiration and education part. We want to inspire. We want to inspire people by, first of all, creating new knowledge. And the study that we just launched is new knowledge, interesting knowledge, inspiring knowledge, we hope, but also by giving orientation and access. And if you think of the academic institution ESMT Berlin, there, of course, we want to set up new chairs on sustainability. We have, thanks to Deutsche Bank, already this sustainable finance chair almost in place, starting soon. Sustainable accounting chair with Deutsche Post, which is great. And we are in discussions with more corporate partners to set up more expertise and academic chairs from which we can generate new knowledge that, and this is one of the self-descriptions of the Institute, can help us in an action-oriented way, research-based and action-oriented. This is not going to be another think tank. We want to be another action tank. We want to translate knowledge into action. And giving orientation and access means that we want to inspire people by bringing them together, by exchanging very different ideas. And maybe I can mention that for about 1.5 years now, we have an innovation series of talks where we bring together very different people from academia, from NGOs, from corporate partners to discuss questions of how to translate sustainability into action. We have, and this has a long tradition with the ESMT, a Sustainable Business Roundtable. The next one is going to be next week, that always focuses on one topic of sustainability and then brings together very different corporate partners to exchange ideas and learn from each other. And these kind of activities will form the basis in our institute to inspire. And then, of course, we need to not only inspire people, but also enable them so that they can translate sustainability from attitude to action. And here, and you see this on the chart, we have this idea of a learning journey. you want to start with very small bits and pieces of knowledge in minutes. So, for example, a 5-minute video where you can understand the core idea, but then extend it into offerings, digital learning nuggets that go from minutes to hours to weeks, and then also result in formally organized part-time and full-time master programs. So all the way from small pieces to the academic offers for students, but also for executive training. And in addition to this, we have tailor-made offers for teams, because this is also one of the discussions that we just had with Astrid Teckentrup from Procter & Gamble. You have to convince the employees. You have to have the people with you. Yeah, it's not just the CEOs, but it's the entire group that needs to be convinced and also enabled to act. So here we have, and we're going to have online and offline offers for teams, tailor-made for the needs of individual partner companies that we will work with. Inspiration, education, the third part is activation. Jannis.
Thanks a lot. You can take my seat. And now activation. As Tobias said, we've inspired now, we've educated people now, but now we need to really get into action. We need to help organizations become active. I think that's what we heard so much in the panel discussion before. But we also need to help employees to get active. And this is especially why we will also offer in our activation programs, workforce activation programs, where we do ambassadorship sessions, where we will do hard print sessions, really defining with employees and defining with also individuals in your organization, what does sustainability mean to me? What's my personal tipping point? Why am I passionate about this topic? And where do I maybe be able to make a contribution within my organization? So really contextualizing this and activating employees within your organization. But beyond that, for your transformation, we also need to develop tools together, tools that really help you in this process. And we actually already started with that by developing a sustainability health check, really understanding where do we stand in our organization with regards to sustainability. Where do I also as an employee stand with regards to my knowledge level and my attitude and ambition towards sustainability. And also, on the other hand, we will also really become some sort of sparrings partner for you in your strategy development, for example, in your implementation of your sustainability programs and sustainability strategy within your organization, by providing you access to our impact, access to our experts within our network, and really sparring with you and making it successful. As well as connecting across value chains and cross-value chain and industry overarching projects where we bring different organizations together to develop new solutions for the future. And furthermore, I think we've heard a lot this analogy of marathon and also triathlon, or as even team triathlon, as Walter said in his panel, in the panel discussion, that this is very important. I will actually try to make an argument that it's even more. It's also a relay session where we might need to incorporate also future generations. And this is also why we work together closely with our partner from Future and the Mission in incorporating really the new perspectives of younger talents of the future and really actively developing solutions with them already now together. Because in my belief, yes, it's a marathon, yes, it's a triathlon, but it's also a relay session. And with everything we do, we basically also incorporate what we've talked about in our session, in our study. Footprint, handprint, and hardprint. Across all our offerings in inspiration, education, and activation, we will make use of these 3 impact approach that we've developed. In our heads, we have currently footprint and handprint. This is our responsibility. This is our duty. This is really in our hands, in our heads. But I believe, and we believe, that we will also need to tap the heartprint. We need to get into people's hearts. We need to contextualize it to them and really make it relevant. And this is also something Johan Seitz said in his video statement. And this is something that we will always focus on in everything we do. In inspiration, winning people's hearts, in educating the new generations and your employees, as well as in activation, really thinking about how we can activate people to join us. Now you'll probably ask yourself, what are our next steps? What do we do right now is basically provide first access to our its initial offerings, like, for example, the study that you will have access to from tomorrow, like the next Sustainable Business Roundtable in the mid of November at the ESMT. And also with our partner, I mentioned this program before with the mission, where we currently also develop the first solutions on sustainable transformation with the first results in the end of December. So those are really first offerings. Then we will, at the next steps, also establish sustainability professorships, like with Deutsche Bank and Deutsche Post on sustainable finance and sustainable accounting, and really develop initial education programs by starting with the little bits and pieces, like Tobias said, up to really certificates, programs, degrees that we can offer you and the future generation. And last but not least, we also obviously want to grow our partnership. We have great knowledge partners already. We have great initiating partners that have been mentioned before. But we also want to expand on this. If we want to bring together the value chains and bring together different industries, this is what we need to do. We need to grow our partnerships, and we need new companies, knowledge-wise, and also as customers that we can work together with and bring together at the table. And also we want to define initial focus topics for the institutes, for each year, where we really say, we do a lot of things, but we also focus on one particular topic in particular, where we want to drive change even further. And now enough talk from our side, I think. Now I would really like to invite actually two of our initiating partners, because we've explained it now a little bit what we want to do, and now I also want to know what the expectations of the partners are with regards to this institute. And one of them we already had on stage, Astrid Teckentrup. I would like to ask you on stage next to Tobias, CEO Procter & Gamble Dach. And I would also like to invite Jörg Eigendorf from Deutsche Bank, the Global Head of Communications, CSR and Sustainability. Maybe you can take place next to Tobias. And I quickly take off this. I come to you. So maybe starting with you, Astrid. Again.
That's new.
I really want to understand, like, we've presented a little bit about the institute, and I mean, we've had some great talks, and you're not out of nothing, one of the initiating partners at P&G. But what are your expectations on this institute? What do you expect from us together?
In our first panel, or in the first part of this discussion, we talked about coming from attitude to action. Mm-hmm. And I think what we would say as a company is we fully stand by this, we can fully endorse this, and we'd like to start rolling up our sleeves to actually get to work. What's important is that in order to accelerate the work that we have been doing, that we learn, and that we learn fast, and probably learn together in those areas where it's not about competitive advantage, but it's rather about what do we need to do for the planet. And so I think if I had to summarize, I would probably say the expectation is we would love FuturIST to be a catalyst for learning.
Great. I hope we will be able to do so together. So why did you join this, what can you bring to the table? How do you expect your engagement as an organization? So we understand how this works, or how this would work best for you.
Yeah, I think for us as an FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods industry, what's interesting is the value chain. You talked about the value chain. So how can we work with our partners in a more efficient way? And there was, and I'm now going back to the 90s, there was an initiative in the 90s that was actually looking at efficient consumer response, we called it at the time. So how can manufacturers and retailers work together to be more efficient to serve our joint consumers? And I think what I would hope for is that we actually find a way to revive that and look at something that we could call ECR 2.0, where we look at serving consumers much better with less waste.
Great. Jörg, Eigendorf, maybe you as a different, as another partner, what are your expectations from Deutsche Bank? We've heard now one wish, basically. What's yours?
Thinking big here is, if Germany is an engineer's place, a country, an economy, and if we want to bring this into the future, Germany really needs to be a leader in sustainability. And with its engineering capacity, with its financial capacity, with everything we have. And for that, we need to work together and bring something together. And this I find really exciting. Around the ESMT now in Berlin, we have this cluster, and we are creating something. And if you look at the success of the US economy, it's always linked to its universities. And I think we need to think in these broader terms, and very big in the sense that, yes, we need to invest, we need to create showcases, and I hope this is only the beginning. And for us in Deutsche Bank, if you then think much smaller, it is really about, and we talked, it started all with the idea to create an institute or a professorship for accounting, for making it measurable. We are really struggling. I mean, if you look at it, and then you come from the big thing to the very small thing, from the big picture to the small picture, we are really struggling here. I mean, if any, EU, everybody talks about the EU taxonomy, and nobody really I think realizes how few we have here and how long this way will be. And there we need, if people think that we will have a transition taxonomy next year, forget about it. We won't have it. It will take years and years and years. And this needs to be science-based. And I like Johan Rockström's approach of having everything science-based. This needs to be validated. This needs to be done in a very sophisticated way between science, between companies, between regulators. We all must work together. And at the end, and what Astrid said is exactly that, it's about collaboration. We can only do this together. And therefore, with this idea to have just one professorship for this, has come into a huge idea by now. And we can only, the Werte-Stiftung and support Futury and all of that in order to bring it up in a holistic and good way.
I want to deep dive on the professorship later a little bit, but before I want to know from Tobias, you also mentioned, Jörg just mentioned, it's all about collaboration, and this is was also our approach in bringing this institute basically to life. Can you tell us a little bit, what was the story? How did this whole thing come together?
I think there was not just one moment, but really this idea emerged. I think I was talking about the passionate believers. I think we all became passionate believers, enthusiastic about the topic, since we heard in many of our discussions how important it is to move sustainability from attitude to action, and that there's lack of knowledge and lack of educational offers. When we screened the market for offers that out there, we didn't find much. So we really thought this is a wide spot we need to find solutions for. And over the past 2 years or so, we built up an ecosystem around sustainability with Johan Rockström's Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. We did the Futury, the mission projects, also with you as corporate partners, where young teams work on innovative ideas for sustainable solutions. So it all came up together we were seeing the need, we were becoming passionate ourselves, and we were trying to put the pieces together and the experts into an ecosystem. And now I think when we were having this discussion of how do we actually scale the impact, how can we have an impact on footprint, handprint, and hardprint, we thought we need a structure, we need an institute. And the first idea was to have a think tank. And we said, no, it's not a think tank, we need an action tank. And so this is how the idea emerged, and I'm actually quite happy that we are all here today and finally launch it, because it was an idea that we were having for quite some time.
Jörg, now maybe you also looking at the ESMT, you have now your new strategy of Aspire, and I want to understand how does this work for you? Tobias now explained how this is for Werte-Stiftung and also Futury. How about the ESMT? Why do you do this now?
So ESMT indeed created this Aspire strategy to lead us into the next couple of years, and it's intentionally supposed to build on what we already have. So Tobias mentioned the Sustainability Roundtable. We are part of this climate governance initiative of the World Economic Forum. So it was just a natural step to say what actually makes a difference in the next years to come. And I would like to build on something Jörg Eigendorf said, rightly said so. When we think of what actually can make Europe unique and also competitive in this field, we obviously talk a lot at this point of time about public finances, so how much debt has to be taken in order to finance this. But this will only be, in a certain way, you could say, a tiny bit of what is needed overall. It will be to mobilize private capital. It will need to create, I think Christian Sewing mentioned this rightly so in an article or in an interview a couple of weeks ago, it will need to fulfill the European Capital Markets Union. You could say a green capital markets union. So in that sense, what we show here on a broader level is a private initiative that is so dearly needed to augment and to supplement what is done on the public level. And I strongly believe in the fact if and only if the private sector can only contribute, then it will make the whole project successful. And this is what we together should try to achieve. And this, in a sense, you could now coming back to the Aspire strategy, couldn't be a better element of what we have in mind here. Mm-hmm. This means to create an element that as a school called ESMT, so European School of Management Technology, provides its contribution to the greening of the economies, to this overall societal goal we have in mind.
When I look at your website, I always see that ESMT is at the heart of Europe, right, in Berlin. Why do you believe this is, and the FuturIST will also be located as ESMT in the heart of Europe, right in Berlin. And why do you think this is the right place to do this?
So one element I just mentioned is the case that there needs to be a European approach that brings together public and the public side and the private side. So I think that's extremely important. But at the same time, ESMT has always considered itself to be a platform between academia, business, and society at large. And certainly when we look at Berlin, the political institutions, but also the platform for debate it currently provides, or it has started, or it keeps providing even more, then I couldn't think of a better place to bring all these perspectives together and really to come up with solutions that bring these different players on one table and hopefully also to activate them for things that will then be implemented.
So I invite everyone to come to Berlin.
Me too.
And visit us. Visit us at the institute.
There's one very important point.
Yes.
You want to get the best people in the world.
Yeah.
You don't get them to, sorry to say, difficult to get them to Frankfurt, difficult to get them to Cologne or to Düsseldorf. If you want to build up something like that in Germany, you need to do it in Berlin. That is where, because it must be international, it must be, we got to get the best people for this. So it's a natural place to be.
Yeah, and we will need to get the best people also for the professorships that we have in mind, the best minds to think about the future. You will finance one of these and endorse one of these professorships. What do you think? What would you need from this? I mean, we're an action-oriented, but also research-based institute where we basically combine these two things and really want to be able to transfer the knowledge that we create, the new knowledge that we create, into application? And what would you expect from this professorship at this stage then?
I like very much the approach that we want action, because we really need action. Yep. We have created awareness enough. Maybe not enough, because we would have different results today if we had created enough awareness, but we need action. But the wrong action leads to nothing, or maybe even harmful. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is we all follow certain metrics and indicators, and eventually we are all clean and green, but the world is not a single step cleaner. That is the biggest danger. So we really need to do it science-based. We need to have the knowledge how we do it, that it is right. And it's not only about measuring CO2 and whatever and having this engineering capacity. I thought Ola Kalenius had a good sentence a couple of days ago. The accountants will save the world, because the accountants eventually will be the ones that need to account for all of this and measure it and link it to the SDGs. I mean, if you cannot link it to the SDGs, what is it then worth? And so far we are a little bit struggling with that, linking every action to an SDG. You can do that, but you need to come to indicators which are right, which are measurable, that needs to be in the IFRS. And this is all what I expect. This is a small task I expect from this professorship, to bring these things together and develop it further in collaboration with us, in collaboration with regulators, because there is a lot to do. And if we wanted to have the right action, we need to have the right science and knowledge behind it.
Exactly. And Astrid, maybe for you, if you also want to take action now, where would you have currently, as maybe personally, but also in your organization as P&G, where do you currently lack knowledge, where you would need new knowledge being created that you can then use to apply?
I think I would like to start by mentioning one partner that cannot be here today, Schwarz Group.
Yes.
And I think I want to mention them because they are not only a customer of P&G, one of our biggest customers in the world, but at the same time one of our suppliers. And I think what's interesting with their recycling business, so retail business, recycling business. And I think what's interesting for us is coming back to this idea of efficient consumer response 2.0. I think trying to actually build a blueprint on how can we serve consumers better, manufacturers, branded good manufacturers, retailers, by creating less waste, and then that would even include the recycling leg of Schwarz as well, is one thing that we haven't cracked. We've cracked the first part of that story in the 90s, but I think we're now here to write the second chapter of that story. And I think it will be very exciting to see how actually we will be able to partner up with Schwarz on that and learn what does that second chapter actually look like.
Yeah, and I can remember that you were right from the beginning basically looking that these value chain partners are sitting at the table. And this is also something that we will always try to do with this institute, is bringing, as I said before, bring these different players at the table. Why is this so important for you? You gave an example right now why you need them, but why in FuturIST? Why do you believe that this is the right place to bring everyone together?
Yeah, I think the hope is, and you just mentioned that as well, we want to be fact-based, we want to be science-based. Yep. Everything we've talked about so far is science-based. And we want to continue along this journey. We want to make sure that what we do is right and that the facts actually support what we're doing. And therefore, I think an institute like the ESMT is actually very well placed to be the backbone of what we're doing, and as I said before, hold us actually accountable to whether the activity that we have is action that leads to results that we want.
And how can we ensure that, Jörg? I mean, you with the ESMT, you have quite some experiences in creating new knowledge, but then also in applying this and helping organizations. How can we take this step?
So I would actually add on one important element to this, which is, I think the first requirement is really to think in an interdisciplinary way. So the study you just presented shows exactly this. To bring together climate scientists and business people is something that is not, has not been there forever. It's really something where I see the need from both sides. So the climate scientists understand what is happening, but need the companies to understand what actually can be implemented to change it. The other way around, the companies need to understand what their actions are, how they are mirrored by the impact on climate. So therefore, bringing this together, I think, is really a very important part. The second part is obviously the research to get, as both of you said, the evidence. And the third one is to then make it, to transfer it into knowledge, into education that can also be transferred to those who really make a difference. So this are students. But I would say the students probably at this point of time are often far, far more ahead than the companies and the professors. So they actually, it's their future they're talking about. And at the same time also the executives who are now in charge of making these decisions.
With our partner Futury, for example, we have the program, The Mission, and this is also something that where you, with Deutsche Bank, are one of the initiators, Jörg, and the other Jörg just said that young talents are already on the forefront, really coming up with new creative ways. The mission is really about bringing these two sides together, young people with creative minds, but also the different corporates along the value chain, for example. I think you've made some extreme experiences with Deutsche Bank there, and what would you say, what would, from your experiences with the mission, working together with different entities, basically, with different perspectives, how would that work for you also in an institute like this?
Yeah, first of all, it's getting the, I mean, we talked a lot about here footprint, handprint, hardprint. Yes. With the young folks, you really get a lot of hardprint. And this is something, and creativity and development, and maybe at the end that doesn't materialize, but sometimes it materializes. And really bringing it into our value chain, this thinking is tremendously important. But the main thing is really to get a lot of that excitement, that different approach into our company in these collaborations. That's a different thinking we get. And we, young folks today, think so different, they act so different with everything they do. If you miss that out, you miss a huge part of the reality and client-centric thinking. And this is important. And by the way, and this is why I love that hardprint issue, Christian Sewing said we have this incredible tailwind. He has never felt that in 30 years in Deutsche Bank. I don't have the privilege to have worked for Deutsche Bank for 30 years. I hope it was a privilege, Christian. So I never had the privilege. But in that 6 years, I have to say that tailwind is amazing. Yeah? And you know that because you touch the heart of the people and you have a topic where everybody sits at the dinner table with friends and discusses this issue. And suddenly our people feel how they can use their work knowledge at the dinner table at the evening. That is a huge bridge. And then combine that with young people and bring this all together, it creates energy. Yep. Energy we need, and energy doesn't come out of nothing, it can come out of nothing, by the way. This is a wonderful thing. That kind of energy we need for this transformation and to really have this long way going, this excitement, that comes out of nothing. That is hardprint. And this is what we create. And I think Futury, all of these initiatives and what we are doing here, that can create energy out of nothing. And that's the energy we need to go through this tough transformation, which has social implications, which will change our society and our democracies. And if we do it right, it will do it to the better. And maybe to add to this, sure. In terms of the narrative, the changing narrative. Now, let's take an example, Schaeffler as a company. Worldwide known as a fantastic engineering company. So now thinking of you could say the narrative for an engineer today, to say you can actually contribute in changing the world, making the world a better place, I think is something that probably provides or requires a certain way of reframing, changing a little bit the narrative, but also it just shows the great opportunities that lie with it, also when it comes to young people looking for their employer.
Yeah, and it's really about also seeing the positive things. As we said before, yes, we understand the duty now and our responsibility, but how can we also make use of it, that we frame it in a way that we see the positive parts of sustainability?
And I think just in one sentence, it is about purpose. This is the easiest way to give people a purpose. If accountants can save the world, you can give them really a purpose. And they love it. It's a lot of nerdy stuff we will have to solve here in the next couple of years.
Tobias, Jörg just said we need the energy. Maybe you can give us the energy now at the end of the session again by answering my question, meaning what do I need to do now? Like I've heard now a lot, I need to take action, I need to participate and so on. What do I need to do now after this, after I've listened to these last 2 hours as a person, as an individual?
Okay, I would then say listen to your own emotions and then put them to action. Yeah, listen at what is it that inspires you. When we do seminars, when we do workshops, we ask the people about their personal tipping points. We ask them, what have been those moments that really made you look differently at sustainability and touched you so much that you really wanted to take action? So asking yourself, what is it that excites me, that motivates me, is the first part. You can do a footprint calculator analysis. You can do heartprint analysis, which is something that we will offer in our seminars. So ask yourself, what is it that excites you? And then please come to us, attend one of our seminars, talk to us. If you are a corporate leader, come and talk to us to see what is it that you need and how can we, with the ecosystem that we have, with the passionate believers that are here on the panel, how can we help? I think the challenge ahead of us is a challenge everybody needs to act. Yeah, each of us can do something, needs to do something, and we are a great team now. And I hope that the FuturIST Institute can have an impact together with you and with us as a team. I like this emotion and this passion that we had for the past 2 hours. So from my side, thank you very much. But over to you.
Yes, and I also want to say thank you very much to everyone basically watching the stream, everyone being here and in Glasgow. Especially also thanks to our FuturIST partners, P&G and Deutsche Bank, as well as the ones who couldn't be here today, Schwarzgruppe and Deutsche Post DRL Group. And also all the our joint offer basically for the CEO study with Bain Company and the PIK, and also Schaeffler sitting here right in the front, being here as a location partner as well and being on stage. So thank you very much to everyone. I hope you had fun, and let's use this energy basically. Let's get into action together. This is the end. Thanks a lot.